because let's say, for example, we're very impacted by Christianity, right? Christianity has no concept of an oretz. Actually, I don't think Islam does either, really. But they don't have a place where it's a religion. The topic of religion is an individual spiritual relationship between God and a human being, right? The concept of a nation with a place for that nation to be is actually not the most obvious thing. Why does it have to do with quote unquote Torah and religion? Why is it the central focus of all of the Torah? I'm asking a very real question. Why is it so important? A spiritual entity has no specific relationship to a land, because why would it? A nation has a relationship to a land that we see, we all experience, we can relate to that as a fact. But we don't understand that as a spiritual necessity of that every nation should have a land as part of the entire the way the world is going from the beginning to the end, that every single nation has its own place. And Am Yisrael has a place in Eretz Yisrael. Why? Lech lecha mi'artzecha u'moladetecha beis avicha el haaretz aserecha ve'escha legoy gadol, as Rashi says, only there. You're only, all of the kiyum of Avraham Avinu, goy gadol, v'arachecha, v'racha, v'racha, v'nivu kol kabos mishpos adama, happens because you're in that land. Right. Why? What does it mean he chose the land?
Asking why God? Why God?
Yes.
Chose?
First of all, the idea of God choosing a land itself needs explanation. What is choosing it for? What? Clearly. So we have a concept called chosen people, chosen land. Both of those needs explanation. In what way are we chosen? Well, I mean, he doesn't want the other nations in the world. He doesn't want the other nations. He put them here.
They didn't choose him.
You're right, there's a midi keneged mida aspect to it, but what does it mean that Hashem chose us? In what way did he chose us? What does it look like? How is it expressed? And what does it mean that he expressed a land? He chose a land. The medrash that you quoted, I think is the medrash in Kisisa, but I have to remember where the medrash is, but it's, so, HaKadosh Baruch Hu was misave lasos dira b'tachtonim. Okay? What is the lashon of ratzon? He decided he wanted to have a dwelling place in the lower worlds. This is part actually of a greater concept, which the Ramchal explains in Das Tunos, which is why does he want to have, what does it mean, first of all, he wants to have a dira b'tachtonim? It means that the assumption would be that the revelation of Hashem is blocked by things that are farther away from his essence. And the more physical things are, if he has no time and space and he's nothing like a created being, the more limited you are, the more it's a block. Right? The assumption would be that it's a block. And you wouldn't be able to perceive and experience godliness in such a world. You'd have to leave and break through that block to experience Hashem. When Hashem was mis'ava lasos dir b'tachtonim, what he was trying to do was give us a revelation of him, which is called Yichud, Hashem Echad, which is the sum total of the revelation that we're going to get, Olam Haba, is an experience of godliness in that there is nothing that can actually be a block for Hashem. There's no such thing. It doesn't make a difference how physical, it doesn't make a difference how evil, because he's the source of everything. Everything always is a window and a way of experiencing him. And the fact that he can do that, the fact that he can has the ability to create things that could come from him that are the antithesis and still not be an antithesis to him, still be a conduit to get to him, gives us a deeper revelation of his essence that we possibly could ever have. Because the biggest chasmatic problem of us understanding Hashem is the fact that he's a creator and we are created beings. And that's something which is inherently two opposites. But one way that we can have a little glimpse of what it means to be the source of everything, to being a source energy, is that if we see that everything has to come from the source, there is no way for something to exist and not be truthful to the source. When we experience that, the difference between the Havamin and the Maskana, the Havamin is like, no, this must be something separate. No, you know what? It actually is totally an expression of that source and never is separate. The difference between those is a deeper understanding of Hashem as the creator than we possibly could ever get. In other words, the only way to get that revelation is to have something which would you assume would be the opposite. And even though the assumption would be the opposite, because the truth of his being the source is so unshakable, it's clearly that yes, I experience him as being the source of everything. Did anybody understand what I just said? Yeah?
Can I just...
One second, let me just, because it's very deep things, and I just hope I was able to give it over in English in the proper way. So now, let's finish the idea. Yes, of course it has to be proven, because the entire Hava, the entire reason to think the opposite way, in other words, most of the world shows the way it's presented a disconnect from source, because it can't be. How could Ra come from Tov? How could physicality come from something above physicality? How could it? So the simple understanding of the world is that there's no connection. That actually, at some point, the world functions on its own. Evil functions on its own. The Teva functions on its own. Humanity functions on its own. We are not a revelation of Hashem. And that's how we would perceive the world. But then, because the truth is so resounding, there will always be, and Hashem decides when he wants to pull down the curtain, but even without the curtain being pulled down, there are always going to be simanim, like Purim's story, where it's like, it looked like the story was going one direction and totally not in the right way, and it turned out to be totally going exactly the way the creator of the world wanted it. Whoa, okay, that's pretty strange. Obviously, he's in charge. So there's those obviously is the proof of the whole Bria. And the Tanug of Olam Haba is the deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper understanding of how that's always true, even though it looks like it's always not true. In other words, Hashem could have given us many revelations in Olam Haba. He could have given us his chachma. He could have given us his strength. He chose to give us something which is called Gilui HaYichud, the revelation of his oneness, because what happens is that allows for human beings to be their full expression. They can have free will. They can do all kinds of horrible things. They can do all kinds of physical things and still be completely in tune with Hashem. If Hashem had chosen to give us a revelation of him being smart, then there would be no room for stupidity. Had he chose to give us his strength, there'd be no room for weakness. Had he chose us to give us the revelation he exists in every single place in the world, so the more weakness, the more stupidity, the more evil, the better gilui there is of the revelation of Hashem in the world. So actually he chose, when he was mis'avel asos dir v'tachtonim, what he was trying to do is giving us a way that human beings can function with bechira and still have a revelation of him, and dafka, the best revelation possible. So he basically made a world which, now comes the second understanding, then we'll get to your examples. Because that's true, when his relationship to human beings was never intended to be like Christianity represents. A person having some kind of personal interaction, nevuah with Hashem. Nevuah was only a part. But actually, the real revelation is in the ground, which is, how does the earth function when it's an expression of Hashem? How does a country function when it's an expression of Hashem? How does a government function? How does agriculture function? How does war function? How do families function when it's kind of in relationship with Hashem? In other words, starts with the first assumption is there's Aretz. Aretz is the place for the revelation of Hashem. So you have to first establish Aretz. Now, the truth is his intention was, and his intention will be in the end, that the entire world will be that expression. It's not just Eretz Yisrael. And it wasn't just the Jewish people, it was the entire world. Adam Rishon was there was no such thing as a Jew in Adam Rishon's time, and there was no such thing as specifically one Aretz. The necessity for Eretz Yisrael, the necessity for Am HaNivchar, was like you said, because people were given Bechira, and they chose not to be part of that revelation. So his expression came through people's choice. So we chose him, Avram chose him, so he chose back. And he chose the revelation to be centered around one person. But since obviously that it's not around one person, it's an aretz, it's a nation, it's an expression in all facets of life, it's impossible for you, the fact that you chose me doesn't mean that I can choose you unless you have the kli possible to give the revelation, which is my intention to put into the world. So you have to have a country, you're going to have a goy, you're going to have a nation, which is going to have all sorts of functions of life in it, including government, including agriculture, including family life, including everything. And then I can reveal all of the bracha that I went into you. And what's the point of that? Not that it's to stay with you only, because of that, obviously the intention was his revelation should be into the whole world. But it's a derech to get back to the original intention, that through this land is going to be the same way the Beis Hamikdash is a Shachanti B'Socham. It's a dogma, it's a example of what Shechina looks like in a microcosm, that all of Am Yisrael can go in and watch how a kitchen functions, and how a bedroom functions, and how the inner chamber functions, and how people relate to each other when relate to the intimacy of servitude, of connection like that. Then they can say, that's how my life is supposed to look like. Okay, I'll go do that in my life. The same way is true for the rest of the world, that being the Am HaNivchar, what does it mean? What does it even mean to be the chosen nation? What does that mean? Right? So we have a mashal of it to understand the difference between when there's many women in the world and you choose one, right? You have a completely intimate relationship with that. But what it means on a spiritual level is that the hashgacha, the way that he interreacts with this group of people, is different than he interacts with the rest of the world. The rest of the world, he uses intermediaries to relate to them. So the revelation of what's happening in the world will never actually, in this stage, will never actually represent him, because he wasn't relating to those people through a direct relationship. He was relating to them through a sar, through a malach. And so what you're going to have experience in those lands is whatever the nature of that malach is, Hashem he's relating to the people through that malach. So it's limited. Whereas the Am HaNivchar, what he chose, and the Aretz, where he was Bachar B'Tzion, what he did was, in that situation, everything is going to be a revelation of him directly. So it's all going to be in his rules. So the agriculture is going to look different. Yitzchak Avinu, he planted something, he had 100 Sha'arim. He had 100 times more. Right? We have in Eretz Yisrael nowadays, we are the agricultural leader of the world. We are able to take a desert and make it into a functioning land, right? And we've pioneered the whole irrigation systems and what's it called? Making desalination systems, and we're pioneering science of defense, and we're pioneering this and pioneering that. Why is that? Because we're a kli for revelation of godliness. So through our actions is revealed things that don't play by the same rules, because they're not the same category. This is the creator of the world, the one who runs everything, the one who's all powerful. When he shows up through a nation, it looks different than when his hashgacha shows up to a malach, which is more limited. Okay, so the purpose of Eretz Yisrael is actually the kli. Now those words make sense. The kli under which the real revelation of Hashem can exist in the world. So there's no such thing as the goal of Yechezkel, which is that there's ruach chadash and there's leiv, the das comes into the world. What's the psukim say? That whole experience can only happen in Eretz Yisrael, and now we are aidim to that experience. That all of the shifts that are happening in our lifetime of the revelation of Hashgachas Hashem happens through the fact that people see. There's another one more point that we have to explain to get this really clear. There's a huge difference between the revelation of Hashem, let's say in Nisan, in the beginning of the inception of Am Yisrael, which we were at that point born, where we had all kinds of Aseres Hamakos, but if you notice, Klal Yisrael's chelik in that was very small, right? There was a level of Emunah, there was mitzvos of Mila, there was a little bit of Korban Pesach, there was putting Dam, but the Nisim had nothing to do with us. Moshe put out his staff, and boom, the whole world goes bananas, right? There's no correlation between Moses' actions on a sensible way than there is the Nisim that happened. Whereas you take, for example, the Gula which is the end of the year, which is by Purim, where that's expressed in the opposite, which is everything happens through mankind, and Hashem almost doesn't. It's totally hidden, right? The Gula Asida is a combination of both of those things, which is what we're experiencing now, which is that human beings are totally at the helm, and that's they're supposed to be. Everything happens only through actions of human beings. There's almost no Nisim Gluyim, which is like complete breakage of Teva. When there's no human being involved, he just shows up and he rips open the Yam Suf. Doesn't happen. What happens is you have a soldier who is sitting on the top of a mountain with one tank, and he beats 60 tanks. Now, he clearly was involved, but it clearly makes no sense that because of that. So that happens, right? But it's a combination of what's called lekel hagoymer olai. We start, he finishes. We're the conduit of something much greater than us. We have to show up. Everything goes through our actions, and in that is the revelation that he wanted, that the world itself should show godliness, right? Both in the level of Nisim and also the level of Midos, how people behave, how the morals and values of Jews are supposed to be the revelation of godliness. And when we do moral actions, we bring in a level of morality into the world that goes way beyond. So it's like whatever single Jew does and is on TV for the entire world to see. So it's magnified in a way of like complete looking at scrutinizing it, and the ability to impact. It's like whatever a Jew decides to do in Eretz Yisrael, the whole world is going to either go up or down because of that. That's a perfect example of the relationship that we have of being the cleave for the Gilui of Hashem. This can only happen, this combination of a human beings revealing Hashem through their actions. You need an Am, and you need a nation in which every facet of the revelation of Hashem can be revealed, because there's an entire full-blown expression of all of the necessities that come into creating an Ummah, which is every aspect of society, every aspect of a country, which is Eretz Yisrael, if you notice, has every single climate in it on purpose, because it's a microcosm, it's a seed, it's a DNA of the rest of the world, right? The Am Yisrael is a type of nation which has in it every element of all of the Shivim Umos, because it's a microcosm of the whole world. And the goal is that he should show up in every single physical part of the world through our actions, but in a supernatural way. And then, slowly but surely, the impact should come into the rest of the world. So now we have a little understanding why in Eretz Yisrael, and it's even more so when we're talking about the goal, what it says in Yechezkel, which is "V'nasati lechem leiv chadash ruach chadasha et b'kirvechem," which is geula. Real geula happens through this leiv chadash, right? Because the truth is that what is golus, right? It says in the pasuk in Yeshayahu, "Lechein gola ami mibli das," right? The gola ami without das. The real golus is a lack of understanding the world, and which is why what happens is when we have the geula, ki mala haaretz deya es Hashem. They have the real revelation of das, of understanding what Hashem is, right? Page Nun Hey. paraphrasing because it's kind of repetitive, and I want to move along. Or it's in Yirmiyahu it says Vayilo Yamdu Ish Esre'ehu V'ish Es Achiv Kikulam Yedu Osi, that there'll be so much understanding, internal understanding of integrated understanding in life. What's the concept of das? The concept of das is that we all have ideas in our head, right? We have chokhmah, we have bina, but for it, when it comes down to push comes to shove in life, how do we act has to do with how much these deep ideas integrated in our general functionality of life, how much we actually believe them to be true in functionality of life. That's what das means. So when a person has emunah, they have, yes, I believe Hashem is controlling the world. Until, there's a guy shooting a missile at me and then I'm freaking out, right? So that's not integrated, right? I believe that my parnasa is from Shamayim, but I have to work like a dog or else I'm going to die because I don't trust that I'm going to be taken care of. That's lack of das, right? So das is how much we can experience Hashem in all of the levels of society and reality. He's in agriculture, he's in war, he's in politics, he's in marriage, he's in every single part of the Bria, right? That's called das. So the ikar, what we're talking about, leiv chadash, the ikar of the das is a shift in reality of understanding how this co-creative partnership works. That we show up, we do our chelik, and he reveals himself through those different physical parts of the world. That's the whole point of Geula. So the more das that we can bring into the world, the consciousness, and obviously, as we explained, this only comes through the union of Am Yisrael as a unit, because his revelation is in a country, in a nation, with all of his facets, and the only way they can actually reveal him is if he's involved everywhere. And if they're not, you're working in unison, and there's no way for that to do. So a huge part of the tikkun of das, as we spoke about, if you want to think about, let's say, the different chalakim of Klal Yisrael, so one chalak of Klal Yisrael doesn't have a belief. They're more stuck on the physical. They don't believe the spiritual. They don't believe Hashem is here. They don't have the same level of emunah. They're very much stuck in this stage of, like we have in Yechezkel, of rebuilding the body. That's one level of tshuva that Am Yisrael needs to do. But a second level of tshuva, as we've been speaking about until now, is a level of tshuva of the das, of how each part and parcel is incredibly necessary and inherent to the full revelation. And therefore, the achdus, so even people who ki'ilu shlomei emunah, people who have a lot of belief, if they don't understand that we need every single part and parcel of Am Yisrael in their most expressed way, they also lack leiv chadash. They also lack that das. And so that aspect of Klal Yisrael needs to do tshuva on that. So if we're talking about changing geula consciousness into, and the geula happens if this leiv chadash, the more we participate in it, the faster it happens, the better it happens, right? So if we're talking about what is the actual practical life changes that we need to make, so first of all, as we spoke about many times, it's expressed in achdus. It's expressed in the understanding that, number one, every person is valuable, but number two, why is every person valuable? Because the real revelation of Torah is not in the Beis Medrash. It's not in the Nevuah. It's in every little drop of functionality that happens in the world, that can be done as a kli for Gili Hashem, B'chol Derechecha Doreyu, or not. And that's what Gula consciousness really means. It's understanding how the physical is just a place for that revelation.
Is this expressed in the Medrash about Avram looking at a whole functioning city and saying there's only one power behind it? In other words, did Avram already anticipate?
Well, you're talking about the Medrash of Bir Dolekas?
Yes.
Okay, well, that Medrash, you have to, first of all, what does it mean, Bir Dolekas?
Yeah, I know there's a machlokas, whether...
What do you think it means? If he made it and he had a plan, where did he go? Because you don't make something so complicated. In other words, it was obvious to Avram, that wasn't part of his question. it was obvious to Avraham that there was the design, the complicated design of the Bria meant there was a source. He had no doubt about that. But he had a different problem. Because that's actually an easy emunah. It's actually, no one really starts when they're questioning emunah. No one really starts with the idea that, yeah, this all came out of nowhere. That's the most logical assumption. What they start with is, okay, well, I'd like to believe that it came out of nowhere. It didn't come out of nowhere. But the world is on fire. It's falling apart. So that is a big problem with my original premise. I might have to diverge my original premise to make sense out of the burning down of the world. Right? Avraham Avinu was like, I have this problem. I believe it. I see it. But where is he? Can you please show me how you fit in with this fire? Right? And the answer is very fascinating. What did Hashem answer him? Lech lecha. How is that an answer? I agree with you, that's what it's saying, but the nusach of the Chazal are saying is that he looked at him. And the Avraham Avinu knew that he was there. His question was, where is the Baal Habira? In other words, did he mistalik? Did he pull himself away?
Right.
And the answer is, once he is having a conversation with him, it was so clear that he was there. So then the obvious answer must be, even if you don't understand it, which is an extremely important point, that he wasn't revealed all the secrets of the world of how bad is going to fit in with Hashgacha. That isn't what happened. It wasn't like he had Moshe Rabbeinu. Moshe Rabbeinu said to him, I want to understand all the secrets of the world, and I want to understand, show me your parisius, show me your panim, and you revealed me the secrets of why tzaddik v'ralo. That wasn't what Avraham Avinu had. He didn't experience that. He wasn't the deeper revelation of Torah like Moshe had. But he understood he was there, which means I don't know necessarily how this works together. Asar Nisyonas Avraham Avinu wasn't that he understood. He may not have even understood why he had to Akeres Yitzchak, maybe ever. That wasn't the point. It was the emunah, the ability to hold that I see you're here, and therefore I can deal with the fact that I don't understand because I'm experiencing you. It must somehow work out. That's what emunah is. It's not das. It's not like it makes all the sense to me in the world. It's trust. And that was the level that when he looked at Avraham Avinu said, oh, okay, I can follow you. Where are we going? No idea. I'm going with you anyway. That was the level of Avraham Avinu. It was a total shift. It was the opposite of Adam Rishon, where Adam Rishon was like a chachmalog, and he's like, it doesn't make sense to me. I think we should eat this thing. And Hashem says, no, trust me, it's not a good idea. And he's like, no, I really think we should do this. Okay, so you're going to go with what you think. I don't think the Medrash is discussing the same point. I think the Medrash is discussing one very simplistic point, which is at the crux of the whole world. The stira between the mechanics of the details that he put into creation of the world and the utter chaos that we experience at the same time. How do they work together? Right? The concept I'm talking about is a different concept, which is that his revelation. It's definitely the concept I'm talking about is more of the answer to that question, but that was not Avraham Avinu was not getting the answer. He was getting, first of all, the Medrash is discussing the question, and the answer that he got was much less detailed than I'm saying. It's like I don't understand. The world still looks like a mess, right? But I know you're here.
Right. You're saying that's the main issue.
That's how Avraham Avinu started. He started with Tmimus. He started with Emunah. I don't know what's going on, right? But I'll follow you. I'll go to a different country. What's going to be in that country? Don't know. I'm going to take my son and a Shechtin. How is that possible? If Shech my son and we won't have a nation anymore. It's like the opposite of everything you've been telling me. Don't know. I'll work it out. It'll work out. That was Avraham Avinu's the Tmimus, that the simple trust. And let me just say this if I can explain it. Humanity, it's a level when we talk about the concept of bittul, right? The concept of letting go. I guess the best way to describe it on a physical level is what they speak about pilots, where a pilot in a fighter jet, there's the way the world looks is according on its eyesight, it looks like he's upside down, and on his instrument he's right side up. So if he follows his eyesight, he'll plummet into the ground and kill himself. If he follows his instrument, then he'll be okay, right? In other words,
I always wondered about that.
the level that Hashem wanted us,
Try this at home.
No man.
he wanted us to be in a relationship with him, was one of being able to elevate out of our restrictions. So we, in the way we are extremely limited in what we can actually see. So the solution is not give us understanding and it will be okay. No. The solution is go with me. You're not going to get it. It's something which is beyond where you're holding right now. But if you step up to that experience and you allow the trust, that you'll be able to understand it through the trust as opposed through the working it out technically in your mind.
Mm-hmm.
So it would help me to do a little review of what
I don't know. We are. It's hard to say this. It's not the place where there was just spiritual things. It was the land in which Hashem revealed Himself in the physical. So that's the definition of Kodesh. That's what Kedusha means. The concept of Kedusha is nivdal, that Hashem is, while He's in the Aretz, He is also at the same time nivdal mimenu, not determined by it, but actually sholet on it and kovea what it's going to be because He's separate from it. But it doesn't mean that if you have no Aretz, you don't have Kedusha. You have something else. You have precious maybe, but you don't have Kedusha. Kedusha by definition it involves where there is an Aretz and your relationship towards it, where you have chayrus from it. That's what Kedusha means, always. So if you're talking about the holy sites of Israel, if it really means, like the Beis HaMikdash is a holy site in Israel.
Oh no! So that was going to be where I wanted to go. So,
but in the code, what is the Beis HaMikdash?
well, is it just a holy site? You said a moment ago it is.
It's a
I'm not
house.
Sure you meant that. Yeah.
It's a bias. Specifically, it's this concept. It's all around the physical, everything. What you do over there's a light, there's a table, the cheder amitos. It's the Americas of everything.
Wouldn't have used that term.
I did it on purpose in order to shake you up.
You're really shaky. I gotta think about that. I gotta put that in.
Yeah, the word romance is a holy word. If it's expressed in Shir Hashirim, it's the holiest of holy. That's what exactly it is.
No, yeah. How do you see it? I see it.
It's still hard to read through the psukim and go, wow, this is some microcosm. No, it's not. It's just a lot of details.
The reason why it's exactly what we're trying to shift in. The reason why it's hard for us is because we're missing the core. We talk about details. We talk about halachas. We talk about
The
psukim.
psukim talk about those.
If you felt a relationship, put it in terms of a relationship.
Oh, that's fair.
If you start off, let's say in a marriage, you start off with a husband and a wife.
If you look at the
They
ksuba,
love each other.
you can't complain that the relationship has nothing if you're just looking at the ksuba and gauging the relationship from that. Okay.
The ksuba is just a map, but
Right.
let's say, if you start at people who love each other, and you say, okay, well, we want to have our love exist all over the place. So we first need to get married. We need to have a house. We need to have a place where just for us, where we can experience this relationship in a much more full-fledged way. If you have two people who never interact with each other, then they can't really have that expression of the relationship. So first we need a place where the intimacy is expressed. The most intense place is the bedroom. That's the Kodesh HaKadoshim, right? But there's a lot of interactions that happen, right? In terms of us, there's the service that we bring. We light up the world, right? He wants his world lit up, so we do that. We light up the menorah. Well, the menorah also brings down chachma to us. So he gives, we show up in the relationship, he shows us a relationship. Then we give him lechem apanim, he wants to eat. And that brings us shefa of parnasa into the world, right? And all v'chein all these different things. So it's a relationship where these two entities, which is Shechina and Kutcha Brichu, which is Am Yisrael and Hashem, wanted to have a full-blown relationship. So you need a place where it can be fully expressed in the most details. And that's a microcosm, because that's only one tiny chelik of Am Yisrael being represented, the Kohanim. It's for everybody. But practically speaking, it involves only a small amount of people, right? And it's a microcosm to express that all over the place. And then there's different levels. You go outside of there's the Heichal, and there's the Harabayas, and then there's different places in Yerushalayim. You can eat certain things, and other places you can't eat certain things. These are all levels of how much that full expression, and how much is it up to us as the Am to now copy what we learned over there and reinterpret it in our own personal life, how it looks in everyone's house. Is my house going to look like the Beis HaMikdash, or is it not going to look like the Beis HaMikdash? Right? And how does it look like the Beis HaMikdash? Not with Hashem being the Merkaz, because that is, we're a Kli for Hashem. So first of all, the Merkaz has to be my intimacy, my husband, my wife, how I run my house, how the parnasa works in my house. If I do that in a proper mutukun way with hadracha of the Torah, it'll naturally become like the Beis HaMikdash, where there's shlosha shutim v'odam. After we do our chelik, what happens is Shechina shruya b'neihem, right? What's Shechina? Shechina is the natural sum total of two parts, which is female and male, coming together. And how in the world can these two things come together? The power that's ma'ached them is a Kadosh Baruch Hu, is a Shechina, right? So the energy, the love, Shechina is love. The expression of oneness that exists in the world, that's Shechina. So when we go out to our house and we're copying the midos that existed between Hashem and Am Yisrael in that Beis HaMikdash. We want to do those same midos, and naturally we will have Shechina, right? So the same thing is true for agriculture. The same thing is true for war. You copy the midos of what it looks like to be in a relationship with Hashem. You apply them to all different extrapolations of it, which is in government and you have help with that, right? You have the Sanhedrin who is able to mitargem all of these. They have to be by the Shechina. They have to sham teitzei tzion. Torah is teitzei mitzion. You have to extrapolate what this relationship teaches you, and the pratim go into all the different details of life. But the reason why we have a hard time dealing with it, because we're missing the klal, we're missing the shorish, we're missing the relationship. We're trying to deal with the details. It's like going into a marriage and saying, you know what a marriage is? A marriage is you give money to your wife to buy food. A marriage is you buy her clothes. A marriage is that you set aside for a house, and a marriage is that she cooks you food, and she and somehow there's some kind of intimacy thing. You sleep together and you create children. That's marriage. You missed the entire point. You talked about all the extremely out of the trappings of other marriages. That's what Torah is in Golus. That's what Torah is without the Gili of Shechina, without the relationship going on, which we are missing. So right now we're working on the Kli. We're working on the place where when we have this Leiv Chadash, it'll have a place to show up in. So you already have. The same way you can't compare the level of understanding of what Am Yisrael means as a nation. What does it mean that Am Yisrael impacts the world, right? The standard Jew living in Eretz Yisrael who is not intelligent and never learned a lot of Torah sees the fact that Israel is a mini superpower now much more than the biggest Talmid Chacham could ever have understood it 50 years ago. Because we're living it. You can't argue with it. It's an experience. Right. So that's what's going to happen. There'll be more and more experiences of the intimate relationship with you see the simplest people talking about how much they love Hashem and Hashem is in their life and He's everything for me. Where did all this come from? All these songs, all these beautiful songs that people are writing. Because it's lived experience. It's not ideas. It's not something you learned in a sefer. That is what's Leiv Chadash. And it'll get more and more and more and more. Sometimes it'll happen through wars, which is painful. Sometimes it doesn't have to happen through wars. It can happen through extremely beautiful experiences of Achdus, of Am Yisrael as a nation, and working together and forming a functional government that we do nice things for our neighbors and we take care of each other and all like that also. It really depends on our bechira. But Leiv Chadash is the same. What the word das means is that's integrated all these ideas that we read in books, we now feel and experience and know are true without anybody telling me, without reading any book. I just know it because I'm experiencing it. It's like reality to me. That's where we're going, and we've moved quite a lot since if you think about what happened in the Shoah and the Kamas Medina. Think about what we're holding. It's a very short amount of time on the amount of hasaga that happened in the world. We're moving very, very fast. And who knows what's going to be in 10 years from now? There's no way to know. Right?
So to reiterate his question, so is it a revelation that we are experiencing, or is it like drinking coffee and you're getting an infusion of something that's has a chemical reaction and causing you? Is it both? In other words, is God making
not
events from which we will hopefully absorb the impact and the message, and we will change, or does God say, okay, I lost patience with you guys, you're not absorbing the message, I'm just going to change your brain waves. A Lev Chadash, is a Lev Chadash changing your brain waves so that you
No. Let's talk about the psukim in Yechezkel, right? It starts off with a ruach, and then there's a kibbutz galus. So let's look at that on a historical level, right? There was incredible hisorus to come back to Tzion. How did people understand that? In other words, it was there so rampant all over the place. It was clearly something was coming from beyond each individual person. But each individual person was trying to translate this inner calling inside themselves. So a lot of people translated it as like Herzl did. The Jews are this nation. We've been killed all over the place. We need to protect ourselves. It's all about technical, practical safety. Right? It wasn't this vision of messianic vision of the Malchus Shamayim in the world. And so people went with that. But my point was that there was some kind of internal calling that our brain had to interpret. That's how things work. There's hisorus from the Shechina HaKadosha, which is the Neshama Kolelas of Am Yisrael, and then people have bechira of how much they want to listen to themselves and understand what's going on with me. The same way if you on a simple therapeutic process, it's a lot about, well, what do I really want? What's really up with me right now? What's really bothering me now? What's going on in the situation? Well, that's hisbonenus of das that people can develop, is when we try to understand ourselves. What's going on in this pull? Why do I pray? Why is it that I'm thankful to Hashem when all these missiles happen? What's going on inside of me? When people have the choice to internalize the messages, the internal message being translated to the external life of a person, that's where the question of Lev Chadash comes. And so, will it happen? Your question was, will it be like coffee that you take and it's forceful? It's not forceful. It's something coming from your internal space. So it's actually re-identifying. It feels not being forced into something. It feels like coming home, which is what means tshuva. You're actually coming back to your core. It's like, now I feel connected. Now I feel settled. Now all of my parts are working together. And you can also resist. At a certain point, you won't be able to resist. The messages will be so strong and so powerful. It's like, you know what? I just have to concede. But it's conceding to an inner truth that you know is true. That's why it comes from the lave. Otherwise, it would be described as it coming from the outside. And that's, by the way, the whole difference between Nisim Gluyim and Nisim that are Nistarim. Nisim Gluyim, the Gemara says that Esther is Sof Kol HaNisim. Right? Like right before the Shachar, which is the darkest point. It says, is Sof Kol HaNisim. So the funny thing about that Chazal is that they're describing the period of Nisim as darkness. Wouldn't you think that would you think Am Yisrael in Mitzrayim were in darkness, or were they in light? And the truth,
classically we think they're in light.
You classically think they're light, but the truth is they're in tremendous darkness. And the proof of that is that we got to the 49th level of Tuma, that if we wouldn't have gotten kicked out of Mitzrayim quickly, we would have never been able to leave when the Makos were happening. And the worst thing is that we left and the people thought, Vahi b'shalach Paro Mitzrayim. Paro sent us out. There was such a level of not connecting things because the messages were like coffee. They were external. They were super overimposing experiences like, whoa, okay, I guess everything that I've ever thought of in my life is not true. Then it goes away and you're like, you know what? I'm kind of comfortable with what I think. Let's go back to that. It didn't come from an internal process of me and understanding myself. When things come from internally, comes through Maisa Adam, where there are nisim, but there's still choice, that's emunah. That's where people are actually in light, because they've changed their perception. They've used the experience they've seen in the world, and it taught them something. And now they own that information. It's ours. No one's going to take that away from me now. So I don't need the nace to stay away. I left with R when the nace is gone because I learned something, and now I look at the world in a totally different way. That's the point of geula. And that's what the Leiv Chadash is. It's not just its external process at all. It's an internal process of Leiv and understanding and das.
Okay, so it's internal, but you're admitting that God is going to keep raising the heat until that external process only almost
External
you have
stimulus.
no other way
It's
to...
a stimulus.
Yeah.
But I've got to see it and feel it.
The Gemara in Psachim says that tshuva kadma la'olam. Tshuva, the concept of tshuva comes before the world. So the way the Mekubalim understand this, the Rebbe Kook speaks it out, it's not just that there is this concept, this individual ability to do tshuva, and you can relate to it. The entire world, the fact that the world is always going towards tikkun, it's before the world was created, the concept of tshuva was that the entire world is trying to get back to its source. It's always in movement to be in conjunction, an expression of Malchus Shamayim. And that movement goes way beyond any individual and way beyond even Am Yisrael. It's the movement the same way the body naturally heals itself. The Bria naturally heals itself. And so since there was Shviras HaKelim and there was Breishis Bar Elokim Esa Shamayim V'Asa Aretz, right? So if Hashem has created the world Esa Shamayim V'Asa Aretz, it should be beautiful and complete, right? Shleimus. V'Ha'aretz Haisa Sohu V'Vayu Choshech Al Pnei So. What happened? That's one pasuk to the next. Shviras HaKelim. In other words, the world exploded and couldn't deal with the Ar. But the natural process of the world is tshuva. It's going to heal itself. Slowly, it's going to bring back the ability to have those kelim, to be able to receive that R, and it's going to be, again, brace Shemayim, Aretz, and a Shleim will stick away. That's a koach that is way beyond humanity. It's naturally in the world. It's the Sod HaYichud, that he created a world which will, by definition, work. Right? We can participate or not participate, it's going to happen. So it's true what you're saying, that there's no question it's going to happen, as is clear in the Nevi'im all over the place, that it doesn't say if you do tshuva. It's going to happen, whether you like it or not. Right? But the question is, how your level of participation, because in the end of the day, what's going to happen is das, you have a lot of choices in that situation to make it more and more and more internal, or it's going to your internal will just take over, and it's like, okay, that's so clear. I think that's similar to the same question that you have, that within the world, he created a world, and most of the Nivroim, Ki'ilu, weren't part of the chosen process, right? That's a similar type of thing. And I think it has more to do with stages. In other words, at that stage, that level of revelation, which had to come through a whole Am, those people weren't ready to be in that type of relationship. Were those people are doomed l'netzach netzachim? I think that's a very superficial way of looking at the whole world. Eventually, they will experience the revelation that comes through the people who did leave, right? So it's a microcosm of telling us how we can create geula and the necessities that human beings need to participate in geula, in their emunah. Without their emunah, you can't create a reality you don't believe in.
And why didn't God wait for them to get on board?
Because then we would have lost everything. In other words, the only way that we could actually hold the ones who are going to be the core group. That's what it says. Chishiv is a kates, right? This is a very important klal, that he will leave everything up to Bechira unless it's going to destroy the whole process. The same way you take care of a child. You give them total bechira and a teenager, unless they're going to kill themselves, and then you take away their bechira, right? So,
but the final bula, God won't leave most behind and say, sorry, you didn't get there. You're not.
you have to understand what the word final means. There's a lot of stages. We're in a stage what's called Yemos HaMashiach. Yes, Mali Haaretz, there's Shem Chol Haaretz. There's no question about it. Where it's going to come from, and who's going to be a player, who's going to be ones who participate at a different level, that we see, right? We're leading the pack. So the leaders of the pack, you have total bechira of where you want to place yourself in relationship to the end goal, right? That's what bechira is. But will he leave people out that they will not experience any good, and he created something and he failed at his creation? No, that won't happen.
So it's not the same as Mitzrayim.
Again, Mitzrayim was a stage, a very, very early stage.
In his understanding, Mitzrayim will not, like the people who are lost in Mitzrayim are going to be mitgalgel into later stages and will experience Hashem's tikkun also. But
Okay, now one other question, because it's funny. I was just learning, my son came across the idea of Shviras Kalim, and he said, why don't you ask that Rav to explain it? Because I don't know what it means.
You understand it totally obviously now. Shviras Kalim is a simple concept. It's in the simple words, right? Hashem's revelation in the world is blocked because the world is not a good way of expressing that or. It's holding in ways that block it. That's what Shviras HaKelim means. A kli is a place where it holds what's poured inside of it, the or inside of it, and if it's doing the opposite, it's blocking that or, then it's no longer a kli. Right? That's what it means. It broke. It held itself in a way that what it revealed was tohu v'vohu v'choshech al pnei sehom, which is not the midos of Hashem in any way, shape, or form. And that's why Chazal say that the Arba Malchios are written, and they're all nirmaz in Tohu V'Vohu Choshech Pnei Sehom, way before there was human beings b'chlal. We already have Bavel and Edom and Yavan. Like, what does that make sense, right? Because those are kochos hanefesh that are expressions of midos that they are blocking. They're not the same midos of Hashem that later on were expressed in human beings in the way they left their malchus. So you can obviously understand the way Achashverosh treated women wasn't a very godly experience, right? It wasn't the way of a deep expression of the intimate relationship between the creator and the created beings. He didn't do that. That was not choshech, tohu v'vohu, I think it was. Right? So there was a negative expression of godliness in the world. It wasn't a good way, it was a block. That's what Shviras HaKelim means. The world has to be run a certain way where it can be, if you have a person who's moral and you have a person like Avraham Avinu who's doing chesed to everybody in the world, that can be a kli for the expression of Hashem, because he fits, right? He's this in the same midos. Yaakov Avinu was very yashar in his relationship with Lavan. So here you have a super Gadav, and he's like, I would stay up all night and just watch your sheep and never go to sleep because that's the deals we made in Parnasa. That's Yashrus. That's a revelation of Hashem. That's called a Kli, an unbroken Kli. But it's only one tiny Kli. You need a whole Am to do that way. You need a whole world to do that way. That's the tikkun of the Kalim, of Shviras HaKelim.
It's not.
Oh, it's the same idea, right? Yeah. First of all, Machlokes is a perfect example of how you have Shviras HaKelim. Because you ki'ilu are fighting for a certain emes, right? But in order to bring your point into the world, you have to destroy the other point, which by definition is no longer a kli to hold the Or of Hashem, which is super complicated and super all-encompassing, and his version of the world and your version of the world are all part of something greater, and you need both of them to happen. So you start saying, you have machlokas, you automatically destroy the kli. That's a perfect example of Shviras HaKelim, right? What was the other example you used? The pilpul, right?
No.
Okay, also pilpul. Pilpul makes things overcomplicated. Hashem is pashtus, right? So if you can't, if it's, in the end of the day, it's not, the Ramchal is famous for writing the most deepest concept in the world, and he said it's pashut. right? Because it may be have a lot of deep thought to it, but when you see the entire thing, it's like that's just obvious. This is the way it is. It's misyashav alev in a way that it becomes. So if you don't have a lot, one of the simanim that things are not true. If you have pilpuli halacha, it's like, in order to say this chiddush, you have to this, and you have to have this, and this person has to work together, and it doesn't misyashav alev. It's just not. It doesn't seem to it. That's a messed up kli. It can't show the simplistic aura of a revelation of Hashem.